Hey guys, it's Crossroads here. I had the distinct pleasure to interview the CEO of PayPal, Alex Chris, and we had about 25 minutes to talk. There's a few edits here and there that are just removing uhs and ahs and stuff on my end. But this otherwise is an unedited interview, willing to answer everything that we had time to ask. There was nothing off limits. Without further ado, here's that interview. Alex, thank you for joining me today. It's an honor to have you on here.
Oh, it is so good to be here, and thank you. I've been waiting for this and looking forward to this for a while, and I feel like we've got to clear up a couple of things. First, a huge congratulations on your 20,000 followers. I'm very excited for you. And second, just so that we don't get any questions afterwards, I think we need to confirm that you and I are not brothers.
Correct.
There's no relation, but again, it's really exciting to be here.
Yeah, I was curious if you had seen that meme. So
anytime you want to take the job, it's all yours. There you
go. Yeah, if you need, when you go on vacation, just put me in there. Nobody will know the difference. And
I love it.
Yeah, I even shared with my a young daughter, and I was like, hey, some people say that he looks, like my brother, and you actually do look a lot like my younger brother. And she's like, wow, you really do. And so, yeah, not related. So, but it is an honor to meet you virtually. And I thought you guys had a great event with Investor Day. And I think the market's probably still digesting that. And I am too. Just had some follow-up questions. So one of those things, you've been at the company for about a year and a half now. And I'm just curious what the biggest eye-opener or surprise has been for you so far.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. Let me just start with why I joined. It has only been a year and a half, which I know for many of you feels like a long time. For me, it feels like a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And I joined because, first of all, I have a deep passion for serving small businesses. It's something I've done my whole career. I've run my own startups and small businesses, and I know what that feels like to be struggling to make payroll and struggling to grow your business. And PayPal has breadth of small businesses at a scale that I've just never seen before. And the opportunity to serve them is incredible. On the other side, we have hundreds of millions of consumers that, especially in this day and age, are struggling to put more money in their pocket, struggling to figure out which products and services make the right sense, and struggling to figure out which merchants they can trust. So having an ecosystem with two sides of a network, I've at this kind of scale, I've never seen before. And I love network effect products. I love the opportunity to create flywheels that just start to build on themselves. Now, flywheels are exciting when they're working. They also take a long time. And the biggest surprise, back to your question, is just, how even with both sides of the flywheel, when I got here, the teams were really working in silos. There really wasn't a lot of work across the organization to figure out, okay, how do we drive a value proposition for consumers that is also going to drive success for our merchants? And I think that's been the biggest thing that we've tried to do. Hopefully you saw some of that come out at Investor Day. And if you even just look at the continuity across all of the presenters, everything we're doing is driving back to a value proposition for consumers so that they choose us at checkout, online, in-store, agentic, wherever it is, and then a value proposition that helps merchants grow their business as well. And I think once we get that going, it's going to be off to the races. It just, and I know you've got a lot of folks that are following the company and betting on the company, and I wish we could go faster. This stuff just takes time, and it's really hard. But I think we've got a really good plan now.
Yeah, and it feels like you do have a flywheel versus in the past. I don't really think it was there. And PayPal, of course, with a lot of acquisitions over the years, felt very siloed. And you identified that, when you went in pretty closely. And so PayPal Open was one of those big emphasis and pushes there for Investor Day. And I thought that was pretty clear and compelling. So you outlined a number of benefits, you and your team on Investor Day for making that shift. But what would you say is if you could isolate like one main primary benefit, what would that be that's most impactful? And also, what's the greatest challenge with that kind of shift from siloed approach to that integrated platform and flywheel?
Yeah. So for folks that didn't see it, just as a reminder, we had built a number of products over the years. We've done a number of acquisitions, and I've done many acquisitions in my time, and it's a very easy thing when you're bringing in an organization to sort of want to protect them, want to keep them, because most of the time they're growing, or you shouldn't have done the acquisition, but keep them somewhat isolated. The problem is you lose the power of actually go to market or the technology advantage of bringing it deeply integrated. And so I identified that, a year and a half ago. We've been working over the past year to make sure that we're bringing together all of our different components that we serve for merchants into one tech stack, so that the advantage is, as a merchant, you now can consume from us one API, one integration, and get access to all of the different features and functionalities and options that we have across the merchant ecosystem. That's a huge win for merchants, right? Instead of having to do multiple integrations, which is what they have to do today, or with competitors, we now have one integration pattern. And as they grow, they can move globally. They can add FX. They can use our orchestration layer. Like, there's lots of different things they can now consume from us. So the first big change is ensuring that we have one integration profile. And that took probably the most amount of time, was just doing the tech work over the last year. The second is the go-to-market. Our merchants, whether they're large or small, would much prefer to have a single contact, a single company that they can trust. But we were going to market in silos. I mean, just to be clear, we had individual teams that were doing their best, but they were selling their product to the same merchants that their partner, 2 offices over, was selling a different product to the same merchant. And it's just inefficient, and you don't get any scale. You don't get any being able to bundle things together. And so PayPal Open gives us the opportunity to create not just a better tech integration, but a go-to-market motion that allows us to now really take advantage of these relationships we have with merchants.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, it felt like at times different segments of PayPal were competing against each other, and that's just not a great scenario. So with the new system, it's definitely not the case with the new team as well. So I wanted to ask about some of the newer products. Fastlane was one of those that, of course, has been top of mind for much over the last year, and that excellent guest checkout solution. And you mentioned in Q4 that it had scaled to around 2,000 merchants. And really targeting those larger merchants just to drive volumes. And so I'm curious what Fastlane adoption, what the process looks like over this year. And do you expect that adoption, as far as the number of merchants, to accelerate as you move down market to smaller merchants?
Yeah, Fastlane is, I think, one of the most exciting innovations we've come out with in the last year, and probably the most misunderstood in just how adoption looks. And so let me walk through that. So first, as a reminder, Fastlane really changes the game for guest checkout. It is still the majority of checkout. It is a terrible experience for consumers and a low converting experience for merchants. So we take, again, back to where I started, how do we differentiate and create, leverage the two sides of the ecosystem that we have to create better experiences? So we're taking our hundreds of millions of consumers, that profile information, those vaulted instruments, all of that data, and now putting it into a guest checkout experience, so that as a consumer, you can come in, enter in your email address, we can identify you and fast track you through that guest checkout experience. Conversion rates are going through the roof. And because of our brand, we're actually seeing consumers that haven't ever been a PayPal user coming in, opting in to be a Fastlane user. We're now vaulting their instruments, vaulting their information. So this, again, is going to be another flywheel where we are going to be the largest data store of profile, vaulted instruments, and consumer data anywhere in the world. Now, conversion rates are through the roof. Like, why isn't every merchant just adopting this instantly? Like, it makes no sense until you realize, hey, merchants have these deep integrations. Like, their checkout experience, oftentimes they have, if at best, 1 or 2 people working on this. They have 0 people working on their guest checkout experience because they've never updated it. I mean, if you think about guest checkout, it is the same experience for the last 15, 20 years. So we're now going to them with, our pitch deck, our technical folks, our ability to upgrade this. They are loving it. The adoption and the demand is through the roof, but we have to get into their pipeline. Sometimes they have to say, hey, I got to go find engineers to be able to actually do this integration. It's not a difficult integration. It's maybe a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks for a really, really complicated large merchant. But it's not free, and it's not just a flip of the switch. So we've targeted large merchants first because, again, that starts the flywheel going. It gets more and more consumers used to it. And we want to get to the largest TPV available for Fastlane. We also, and this is another question that I get all the time, we've also reduced the friction on monetization. So I get a lot of questions of, hey, this thing sounds amazing. When are you going to monetize it?
Yeah.
We will monetize this. We will. Every contract we're putting in now has pricing into it. So everyone knows that we will monetize this. But I also want to reduce the friction, because if I have to have a two-step conversation with each of these merchants and say, oh, by the way, I need you to go find engineers to do the integration. And, can you go talk to your CFO and make sure that they can afford to do it? It just adds more friction. So the reason that I want to move as quickly as possible is I fundamentally believe guest checkout is going to be a winner-take-all market. Yeah. And when you find winner-take-all markets, I just don't think, branded checkout, there's lots of different choices. We're all fighting for value proposition. In guest checkout, it doesn't make any sense to have multiple different choices. We have the largest set of profiles. We have the largest consumer ecosystem, and we have the largest breadth of merchants that we can get access to. So we're going to move as fast as we can and lower as much friction as possible to get as much penetration globally. It's why you've seen us sign up partners like Adyen and Chase that we announced earlier this week, international. So, the reality is this just takes time. My guess is it's going to take a year or two to get as much penetration as we really need. But I also think we are going to be the winner in this space. And then our ability to manage pricing, to be the leader that can actually decide what pricing looks like, we're just in the pole position there. So I hate the patience. Trust me, I am the most impatient person that you've met. And so I want to go as fast as we can, but we've just got to go through the motions in order to get there.
Yeah, and it makes sense to just scale it and monetize it. It's great that that's not a multiple conversation thing, that they know that that's coming. So I agree with you that what's very compelling about guest checkout is, it's not been in the past well addressed by the market. There are a number of other guest checkout systems in there. PayPal seems differentiated to me, and that this, unlike payment processing, it is a winner take most, if not all. So if PayPal succeeds here, and let's say a couple of years down the road, 2 or 3 years, that you've succeeded in taking the market, what does that look like as far as the impact on the PayPal ecosystem?
Well, there's a few things. First, from the consumer experience, I think we're in a much different place, at a much stronger position on just owning the end-to-end experience for consumers and merchants, right? When we have guest checkout, which is still going to be 40, 50, 60% of checkout, but it's now a PayPal experience that's been accelerated. Our ability to now create value proposition offers in that experience from the merchant to the consumer to start to create loyalty and rewards and engagement, it just becomes an end-to-end experience. And if you saw my Investor Day presentation, we are shifting, and this again is the biggest mindset shift I really want folks to go through, is we are not just thinking about that payment checkout moment. That was the problem 20 years ago. That problem has been solved. There's lots of players that if you just want to get checked, it's just not a problem. Like, consumers know how to pay. Yeah. We are now looking at the commerce experience. And so if you now pull back and say, wait, how do merchants find the right customer? How do they engage with a new customer they've never talked to before? How do they personalize their experience? Well, as we start to own guest checkout and branded checkout, we're now building a profile ecosystem that enables that merchant to personalize the experience for consumers they've never seen before. It allows them to now put things into the checkout experience or into the end-to-end shopping experience that can bring a consumer back, that can give them an offer right in the moment to be able to drive differentiated behavior, can give them a buy now, pay later offer if that's the right size to be able to increase basket value. So there's just lots of different things that we can now work with merchants to be able to control when we own every one of those experiences. I think guest checkout is the biggest untapped opportunity for that. It's just a terrible experience today. Our ability, when we own this a year or 2 years from now, whatever it takes, is now the ability to provide merchants a much better experience to connect with their consumers and get consumers converting at a higher rate.
Yeah, no, love hearing that. That's very helpful. So Diego had mentioned in his segment that the long-term goal was 10% of transaction margin dollar. That's further out. It's not near term here in the next couple of years. But he said that it's reachable by scaling next-gen growth vectors, AI, personalization, ads, and crypto. And so the last two I really wanted to hone in on. So with advertising, I know that my followers will shoot me if I don't ask about advertising. So, what does scaling look like for the advertising product and platform? And what does a TAM look like? And what are some measures that we can use to judge its success?
Yeah, ads is a super exciting lever for us. Again, this is back to how do we leverage the merchant relationships and the consumer relationships, right? If you think about, um, you know, any merchant today, they are out there spending, depending on their size, millions, hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars to acquire that next customer. And if you think about the traditional ways that that works, oftentimes it's search engine marketing. It may be above the line media. Like there's lots of different ways that they're throwing money out, but the actual calculation of ROI on that is really, really hard. And so when we're able to go, and I'm sitting down now with CEOs and saying, hey, you've known PayPal, you've worked with PayPal, we're integrated into your checkout experience. We've got lots of innovation coming. I don't want to talk about that right now. Let me just hear from you. What is your biggest challenge? And I've yet to have a single CEO say, basis points on processing is my biggest challenge as a CEO. Like no one says that. They all say the same thing. I need to get more customers. I need to get the right customers. I need to get them to convert. I need to get them to engage. And I say, great. Well, what customer are you looking for? And between the hundreds of millions of PayPal users that we have, the tens of millions of Venmo users that we have the target demographic that almost every merchant that I've talked to is looking for. And when I say great, so if you're looking for that customer, if I could enable you to know who that customer is through a shopping profile, and then target them with a targeted ad, either on our platform through the PayPal app, through the Venmo app, or even off platform through other different mechanisms, would you want that? And not only can I help you target them, but the way we'll monetize it is, yes, you'll pay for the ad dollars, but we actually will monetize it when you win. So we win when you win. When they check out, we'll take a percentage of that as well. But now you could do very specific things all the way through the ad process that is totally unique. Let me give you an example just to bring it home, because you all have seen the ads that we put into the PayPal app. Those are great. Those are targeted discounts. Those are paid for by merchants. That is a business that is starting to scale. I think we take that 10 steps farther into the future, right? Imagine you're sitting, hopefully like me, watching, an NFL game that's now being played on Netflix or YouTube or any of these other places. The ad that you're going to get in the future coming from the commercial break of that football game is going to be personalized to you. Well, where are they going to get that shopper profile data? I think they're going to get it from us. And if that ad can be an action-oriented ad, not a, hey, you should go buy from this fast food restaurant, but hey, you should go buy from this fast food restaurant. And by the way, you have, $5 coupon right now sitting inside of your PayPal app. Go click here to be able to make that purchase and have, it delivered to you, or go tap to pay to make it happen. That is an engagement and an ad e-commerce and offline commerce solution that nobody else can do. And so when we talk about going from just solving payments to solving the end-to-end commerce, ads, that offline experience, all of that end-to-end is what we're shooting for. When you think about what the opportunity is, that's now opening up hundreds of billions of dollars of ad spend that these merchants are spending today that we never had the right to have a conversation about before.
Yeah.
And so that's what's really exciting, is we're now bringing in the CMO into these conversations as we're talking to merchants. We're bringing in their ad dollars, and they're looking at us and comparing us versus, from an ROI and a CAC perspective, versus alternatives. And I think we're going to find that our efficacy of being able to convert is in a completely different place.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear, and appreciate the update. And we look forward to further those. I know that's been one of those top of mind products too. So the other piece there that was interesting with Diego's comments was on crypto, and I saw a couple of PayPal stablecoin mentions in the Investor Day, which was great. And of course, it's been used for back-ending Zoom and basically redeeming it, making it actually viable there for consumers and for you guys as well. PayPal Ventures, we see some usage of it. Michelle mentioned powering merchant capital. I'm just kind of curious with the stablecoin, how else are you planning to integrate that in the PayPal ecosystem? And is this something that you're looking at moving as much as you can onto that to pave digital payment rails? If so, what's the impact of that?
Yeah, look, I've been involved in crypto and different blockchains for a long time now. I think it really is going to be the future of commerce, and I'm excited with our opportunity to help solve customer problems. So a few things that you already highlighted that we're focused on. First, cross-border transactions are incredibly expensive. That's why we integrated it with Zoom, and the ability to settle in a fast, secure, less expensive way cross-border is a huge win for customers. If you think about other big, this is Michelle's point on B2B transactions, right? The majority of B2B transactions are high dollar value. They're still being done on checks. Right. And so you've got a merchant that's waiting 45, 60, 90 days for that check to come and clear. Yeah. And the reason it's on check is because everything else is either full of friction, or you're not going to put it on a credit card and pay 3% for a $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 invoice. So the ability to move those dollars through a stable coin or through some kind of crypto rail is a huge opportunity for us. And most of the time we actually have the merchant engagement on both sides of those ecosystems. So you saw us talk about bill pay. You saw us talk about leveraging crypto for some of that. So those are, again, additional markets that I think are exciting for us as we move into. But if I just pull back and think about, stable coins in general and what next gen crypto could look like, this is all about reducing cost.
Yeah.
And it's all about creating an ecosystem where, we have a system today that works, but it's a system that's been around for decades and has a lot of different hands in the cookie jar when it comes to the costs that every merchant and every consumer are paying along the way. I think next gen rails enable us to reduce those costs. And when we do that, we put more money back in the pockets of consumers, more money back in the pockets of merchants, and it creates a monetization opportunity for us as well. So we're looking at this sort of in the long term and thinking about where are the different places we want to play now, which have the most friction, things like cross-border transactions, things like large payments. But ultimately, over time, we see this really being impacting every different part of our business.
All right, that's a great answer. I appreciate that, and look forward to seeing how that's used in the long term. It's this is the year of the stablecoin. You guys are a little bit ahead of the curve on that, so it's great to hear. One last question then to wrap up is. I know you can't talk too much about the stock price and price action, but it seems to me as an investor that there's a disconnect between what the market is seeing for PayPal and it's reflected in the price action versus the direction that you guys are clearly heading. And so what do you think is the biggest factor that the market may be overlooking in PayPal right now?
I have no idea. I came here, I think the stock was significantly undervalued. We're up 20% year over year, and I think we're still dramatically undervalued. We inflected a business that had been losing money for 2 years in a row and delivered. If I'd come to you a year ago and said, how would you feel about 5% transaction margin, 6% transaction margin in 24? I think pretty much everyone would have been like, there's no possible way you can do that. And we delivered it. And then we put together, again, we're being prudent. I had a lot of conversations with investors when I got here, and a lot of the feedback was, hey, in the past, the company had been really bullish on projections and then missed. And that's just not my style. That's not the mentality that we have. And so we're going to tell you when we say something, we've got line of sight to it, and we're going to go execute against it. My guess is there's been a lot of suffering in this stock in the last few years. You just have to look at the chart and understand that, there was a peak and then it fell. And so we've got a lot of investors, both retail and institutional, that have lived through that. And I think with a brand new leadership team coming in, we're in a bit of a wait and see mode. And the best thing we can do is deliver for customers, execute our plan, provide you as much transparency as possible as to what we're doing, and have a very high say-do ratio. We beat every quarter that we told you what we were going to do.
Absolutely.
I know everyone wants us to beat by even more, and like all of that happens. We also have to recognize that the innovations we're putting out take time, right? This is just, I've worked in different businesses. This just happens to be one where, we are at a scale where when we put a merchant innovation out, like these new innovations we have for branded checkout, they are crushing it. When you look at the conversion rate improvement, it just takes time to roll this out. Like we're talking about tens of millions of merchants, and even the largest enterprise ones, it just takes time to get into their ecosystem. We make a consumer change, we launch PayPal Everywhere. It takes time. I mean, the fact that we got 3 million new PayPal Everywhere debit card users in the first quarter and a half is insanely fast.
It is.
And it's still not good enough, right? Because everyone wants more. And so,
absolutely.
Look, I don't know how long it's going to take for folks to sort of say, hey, we understand that this leadership team is delivering on their commitments. But if you're looking for, everything to turn around in 2 months, this probably isn't the right stock for you. This is a business that we are building a flywheel that becomes the leader in commerce for the next decade and beyond. And that may take a few quarters or a couple of years. And I think we were, we put out some, I think, pretty exciting goals at Investor Day in terms of what we think our long-term transaction margin and EPS growth will look like. We wouldn't put those out if we didn't have line of sight to it. If we didn't know that, hey, when we execute on these growth levers, and we've got lots of growth levers now, when we execute on this, we're going to deliver it. So, again, apologies that this isn't a fast, flip of the switch and all of a sudden everything turns around. But 800 basis point improvement in transaction margin in the first, year is pretty significant. And I think we're just getting started.
Yeah, and the top line numbers, may not be what some people are expecting and hoping, but the bottom line, that's right. I feel like PayPal has been lacking.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, let's talk about that. So I got here and, we had really good revenue growth numbers, right? Really good revenue growth numbers. Empty calories, right?
Yep.
Revenue growth numbers with declining transaction margin. So look, it may be uncomfortable and it may be the hard decisions, but I'm going to make the right decisions for the company for the long term. Absolutely. And going back and having price to value conversations, I won't apologize for that. I mean, our revenue is absolutely slowing for a period of time until we have these conversations. But I can tell you, the conversations we're having are incredible. The conversations we're having with merchants now to be able to price to value, for them to be able to take all the different value-added services we're bringing together to now have conversations about ads. We are having healthy relationships that are building the foundation for growth for the future. So it is absolutely the right decision. And we've been as transparent as we can around, hey, revenue is going to come down for a couple of quarters and then we'll inflect and grow back. But I would much rather rip the Band-Aid off, have the hard decisions and build this company for the long term than grab a couple more quarters of increasing empty calorie revenue that's not delivering anything for the company for the long term, but it looks really good. And I just don't want to do that. I want to build this for the long term. So if you're interested in being with us for the long term, which I know you are, then I think this is the right place for you. And if you want a quarter of just big poppy headlines, it's probably not us.
Yeah, and I think it's a compelling long-term play what you're doing, and it's very sustainable versus the previous plan of attack prior to you. Just it didn't seem like it was long-term sustainable as that sugar rush of calories. So appreciate what you're doing and what you're building, and love hearing turnaround stories. I'm always excited to see where PayPal is going, and really appreciate the transparency, the extra level that you've added there with your team. Investor Day I thought was great, and thank you so much, by the way, for answering these questions and for your time, Alex.
Of course, it was great to spend time with you, and again, congrats on all the success, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, sounds good. Take care.